COVID-19 got the world more attentive to vaccines with how devastating the pandemic has been towards millions of people in different countries across the world. Vaccines are known to save as much as 3 million lives yearly, but bringing them to the market involves a lot, especially secretive contracts, complex science, and huge investments. How do the economics of vaccines work, and how profitable are they? Let's find out. How the profit for vaccines work. Before the current worldwide pandemic, not many people stopped to study the business models behind vaccines. In 2019, the global pharmaceutical market was worth $1.3 trillion, with vaccines making up just 3% of this, and that's equivalent to about $33 billion in revenue. You can tell that it's much more different now. The vaccine market costs a lot more, with countries struggling to be the major suppliers of the coronavirus vaccine. However, even these market leaders find developing a vaccine time-consuming, costly, and at a huge gamble. Typically, it takes almost a decade to come up with effective vaccines for various diseases. Companies working on infectious diseases are often obscure and an out-of-sight burden in rich countries where the scientific power is. Here's one secret many people don't know. The government is the main funder of the science of vaccines. This is an expensive venture because every phase is important and could crumble the entire process. As little as 1 in every 10 vaccines get approved after the Phase 1 trial, while 50 to 70% of those in Phase 3 trials get finally approved. Investors will only come in when there is a high chance of success, and the public sector takes on most of the risk. The cost of creating vaccine goes as high as billions of dollars. We have the government and organizations like UNICEF, the Vaccine Alliance, and Gavi on the buyer side, and then the pharma companies on the other side. With how high the development cost is, these companies are able to maintain their monopoly for a long time, including being able to charge higher prices. Before the coronavirus vaccine, which was created in less than a year, the fastest vaccine ever made was developed by Merck, and this mumps vaccine took 4 years. The urgent response that the pandemic brought also led to a lot of questions about how to price the COVID-19 vaccines. Now, there is so much secrecy surrounding the pricing, with governments being really desperate to gain access to vaccine supplies, even if they have to pay extremely high prices. And we have to put into account that things were happening very quickly with the world in an emergency situation. Therefore, this is the perfect system where the risk of unfair or abusive pricing is quite high. Pharmaceutical companies usually have a lot of power in these negotiations, and even investors didn't hide the fact that they would have wanted the prices to go higher. Therefore, the price of COVID-19 vaccines vary. For example, Johnson & Johnson and the Oxford AstraZeneca company are all about selling the vaccine on a non-profit basis, since they're not so focused on making money from this. The Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine is about $4 a dose. The plan is to do this especially for low and middle income countries. Moderna, on the other hand, charges the United States government as little as $17 per dose, while similar orders for other customers could be up to $37 per dose. The downside to this is that $3 billion have gone into this technology without a penny of profit so far. Still, it's difficult to come up with an evidence-based judgment on how fair the pricing or profit margin should be. Pharmaceutical companies don't have the incentive to want to make the contracts transparent because they want to play countries off against each other. Even the democratic governments don't want rival countries to know they got a better deal or the public to be aware that they got a bad deal. Therefore, there is not much incentive to make this information public. US pharmaceutical companies were under a lot of pressure over their expensive drugs, but that was before the pandemic. At that time, the industry looked like it was ready for reform, but the pandemic has made most of the companies realize their worth and how everyone should just pay money for their investment in innovation. Then there are companies on the other divide who see this as an opportunity to make a contribution by offering this on a not-for-profit basis. Some people would agree that it's reasonable to allow these pharma companies to make profits from the high-income countries, while making sure that it would be available for low and middle-income countries without making profits. Moderna expects to make almost $20 billion from the sale of its COVID-19 vaccines in 2021. Still, they don't reveal the profit margin for this vaccine. Pfizer is another pharma company that expects to make about $15 billion with a profit margin of at least 20%, which will be split in half with BioNTech. When the world faced other pandemics, like the SARS outbreak, they usually end before any pharma company could come up with a vaccine. Therefore, this led to a loss by investors. But it looks like this would be much different this time around with COVID-19. It's expected that this pandemic could become endemic, leading to an annual vaccine market for the coronavirus that could be as high as $10 billion each year as producers make more vaccines to fight new strains. Even if the vaccines are not extremely successful, but they contribute meaningfully to the fight against coronavirus, that would mean that we would be adapting to a flu model where the companies would sell more vaccines for this disease than other vaccinated illnesses in existence. Will this mean that there will be so many competitors who drive the price of the vaccine down? Or would it go up because it would become a normal market with people getting the freedom to choose one vaccine over the other due to its efficacy rate? These are questions that we would have to wait to find the answers to. The future of vaccines. The return on investment calculation is much different for low and middle income countries. These governments are busy trying to secure their supplies of COVID-19 vaccines as the rich countries and vaccine producers are initialing several bilateral deals in their favor. If we were to use market-based prioritization in the business of vaccines, then only the rich people in rich countries would be able to buy every single vaccine out there for a long time, instead of it being sold in order of health priority. CEPI, the World Health Organization, and Gavi set up the COVAX program to ensure that there is equitable distribution of the coronavirus vaccine. So far, they have raised more than $6 billion in their effort to distribute 2 billion doses of the vaccine in 2021, and a large portion of it is subsidized for lower-income countries. A global supply would also reduce the number of bilateral agreements, which seem to have helped for a while, but were no doubt witnesses to the global panic that started immediately after the vaccine started rolling out. There were people hoarding doses, and even with the new variants of the viruses out there, the panic is far from over. Many of the governments that insist that they will politically support COVAX and subsidize other countries through this program have gone around to eat up most of the world's existing volume of vaccines, using an advanced purchase commitment. This is not so surprising since most leaders would want to protect their people. However, this is a global pandemic where one person is only as safe as everyone else. COVID-19 has certainly affected the pharmaceutical industry and modified the business of vaccines. The pandemic turbocharged normal market forces so much, from the speed of developing the vaccine to the funding itself. It will also completely shake up the vaccine market, especially because of the introduction of new technologies like viral vectors and messenger RNA. With how fast this technology accelerated vaccine production, there has been a change in who is at the top and who will be able to create the next vaccine. Before the COVID-19 vaccine was created in 303 days, the fastest we had it was in 4 years, while it took about 5 years to develop the Ebola vaccine. This is definitely an extraordinary feat, one that would open the door to the capacity of mRNA in the pharma world. This synthetic mRNA simulates an immune response by delivering instructions to body cells to produce the viral protection. So far, Moderna, BioNTech, and Pfizer have been incredibly successful with their mRNA vaccines, which means that this technology would certainly be applied to several other drugs and vaccines. Now the world could be looking towards creating vaccines for other diseases like tuberculosis and HIV. Since mRNA vaccines can be tweaked to fight new variants of diseases and can also be produced on a very large scale, this increases their profitability. Therefore, there is no doubt that we would have this as the new vaccine that can maintain a high profit margin for pharma companies. Now you know the business of vaccines, and that's a wrap. Do you think the current vaccines will help in finally putting an end to the coronavirus pandemic? Let us know in the comments. Do you like this video? Well, we're always posting amazing content like this, so don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out. Thanks for watching.